What is going on, guys? Welcome into the Voice of College Football. I just want to make an announcement before we get to the video. Just real quick, tomorrow, April 24th, the NFL Draft is tomorrow. It is also the debut of our new call-in show. It was named by the fans the Husker Gutter Live Call-In Show. So, fan-driven. So if y'all want to call in, talk about the draft, we're going to start at 6 p.m. Central, 1 hour before the draft starts. And we're going to run that into the draft. So we figured it'd be a good time for everybody to kind of come in, join the conversation, talk a little bit football, Husker football, and then talk about the draft. So y'all be sure to come in, at least join the comments. And then for those that want to call in, just join us there and call in. But now we will get you over to the video. Peace. Welcome in to the next edition of Spring Intel. This time it's the final edition, and we are going over safeties and rovers, two positions that are talked about a lot because of the versatility of our safeties and the versatility that goes into the rover position. So Brian has been doing this, throughout the rest of the position group. So shout out to him. Thank you for that. And I'm joining in today. So we got a few players to go over. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. What do you say? I'll go ahead and start with Deshawn Singleton. So sitting at 6'3", 210 pounds, give us your breakdown of Deshawn Singleton and just kind of how he fits.
Yeah, so the one thing about Deshawn that I loved about his game is his ability to support the run and be a run defender. With him likely moving over to the rover, because if you think back to his interview a couple weeks ago, he said they're moving him all over at different safety spots. One of those is rover. His ability to stop the run makes him a natural fit for that position, gets you an extra hat in the box. His lateral quickness, like we were talking off air too, he may be kind of a slower safety, but a faster linebacker, which kind of helps for that rover position. I like his physicality, his length at 6'3". He's probably, once they update the weights, he's probably in that 215 or so range. And there's three key, there's multiple responsibilities with the rover, but there's three keys that they like. A guy that can cover the deep middle third, which as a safety, he has that ability. Now we've talked, he's not a great safety in coverage, but he's okay. And then the QB spy, when you're going to be a little bit closer to that line of scrimmage, you'll be a few yards back from probably your linebackers, but you're a little bit closer to that line of scrimmage, watching that quarterback. If he takes off and runs, he's going to be the guy to hunt him down. And like we already talked about, the run support. And then our player comp was Deontay Williams. I'll let you kind of dive into that part of it a little bit more.
Yeah. So yeah, I was thinking off the top of my head, and just trying to think of a play style that is very similar. This one might be a little bit of a loose comparison with Deontay Williams, but in terms of their just downhill aggressive play style, one of the things Deshawn Singleton's going to do well is he's going to be able to attack the gaps and run stop. And Deontay Williams excelled at that, while Deontay Williams was a much better all-around player, in my opinion, especially in coverage. They both play with that downhill aggressive edge to them. And whenever they do make tackles, they finish. They're aggressive. They're violent at the attack point. So Deshawn Singleton, of course, not as sure of a tackler as Deontay Williams, doesn't play as good at coverage. But in terms of when they're playing in the box, I think they're very, very similar. But Deshawn Singleton's a trusted member on this secondary. Decided 2 weeks after the season he was going to come back and play. A veteran voice on that defensive side of the ball, and that's valuable. So yeah, I think it makes sense for him to kind of make that move, kind of into the box there, but because a lot of his, flaws are coverage related, and kind of being out on an island, he gets exposed a lot in certain situations. So limiting the type of coverage he would have to be out on, I think would be key to improving his game for sure.
And one thing we talked about too off air was with Nebraska's, like if you remember last year, Giff kind of had a lot of responsibility in that deep middle third, and that was his weakness as well. We think like guys like Buford, who we're going to talk about in a second, their coverage ability at safety will allow that position, the rover, to be more of that extra hat in the box, and you'll trust your two safeties over the tops, and not really necessarily always to have that rover in that deep third. I think it's going to be a little change or a little wrinkle that we see with Butler as the defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just his limitations, just his recovery ability, and ball skills. He's just not a ball hawk. So yeah, I think he will excel kind of in a move like that for sure. So anything else on Deshawn before we move forward?
Nope. Let's jump on forward.
All right. Okay, so moving on to our next player in this episode, Marquez Buford. Brian, go ahead and break down Buford for us.
Yeah, so with Buford, he's kind of like we've talked about, moved back and forth from corner and safety, and I think that's stunted his development a tad. Now, he played fairly well at corner last season. He had a 68.7 PFF score, but he's a little undersized at a corner. He's 5'10", 5'11", 190 or so pounds. But I think he's going to lock down one of our starting safety spots. Right now in camp, he is playing at a very high level. He's kind of settled into that safety spot now that he knows he's not going back to corner. And I know Nebraska likes to cross-train guys all over the place, which is beneficial. But at some point, you have to hone in on one position. At least that's the way I see it. And he's certainly found his home at safety. Even if, because a lot of times he's moved to corner because of injuries. And even if that does happen at corner, at least Nebraska has addressed that position through the portal, and they have younger guys developing that will allow them to utilize those players as opposed to sliding Buford back down to corner.
Yep. And the thing about Buford, like we, love his versatility and all that, but like you said, it's better to hammer down on one position. So you can, techniques are a little different between each one. The actual kind of way they play the game there's a big difference between the two. So having him in an actual natural position to be able to just go in there and develop in that room would be a lot better for him. But like he's effective, wherever you put him. The best way I describe him, he's, really good in a lot of areas. But the thing about him is I just think his value increases more in this Butler, multiple scheme defense, honestly. But he, great play anticipation, really good at kind of seeing the plays develop in front of him. He's a single digit player. So, respected by his teammates and peers. So, a leader in there, which goes a long way, especially on such a young team. Durability could be a concern, but, again, just issues, particularly in man coverage, which, can be worked on, but 35 tackles, a pick, and 5 pass breakups is not too bad. So,
yeah, and I like his ability as a zone safety, which Nebraska will do a lot of with their safeties, is they'll be in like 2 high safeties a lot of times or quarter coverage a lot. That'll allow him to kind of just sit back, read the QB, and make the play as opposed to just locking down a single receiver.
Exactly. Yeah, it's good. It's trying to take as much of the thinking off this plate as possible and just kind of let him, react and play his game. So, Buford, again, just limited on his upside, but overall, pretty reliable player.
Yep.
So, all right. So let's go ahead and move on to our next guy. All right, so Malcolm Hartzog, our next player on this, where do you think he fits? Where is his best role kind of in this defense?
Well, right now we know he's getting a lot of work with the first string as the nickel cornerback. So we probably could have featured him a little bit in our cornerbacks video, but his versatility, he probably, I think, is going to be one of our safeties. And then they could move him to that nickel cornerback in different packages. The thing with Malcolm is, this is why I like him better as a safety. We've talked about this before, is his ability to be in zone coverage, read the quarterback, and make a play. There's a reason why he's led the team in interceptions his freshman year and last season. And he's the smallest dude on the team. He's 5'9". He's 180, maybe 185 pounds. That's why I think safety is going to be his primary spot. They'll roll him down to nickel in different packages. I like his game. You like his effort. He's not a guy you question if he's giving effort. Like, he's always going all out. And I think he's going to be a factor. We're not exactly sure which spot exactly he'll sit in.
Yeah. I think the best way I can describe him is just scrappy and instinctual. Like, he's a dog out there. Naturally he's undersized, so he's had to kind of come up and be a gritty player, so that's kind of that DNA's in him. But that leads to a high IQ typically. So really good with his eyes, better in zone coverage and off man. So, he's one of those guys that, like, where nothing really jumps off the page at you, but he's just really solid everywhere. And that's the thing. Like, same with positions. That's the problem that we're in here with trying to figure out where to hammer him down, what position, because he is so good in so many different areas. You feel like there's pros and cons to each one. It's hard to kind of weigh out which one do you think he would thrive the best in. But, pretty good at route anticipation. He's just got that competitive nature to him that you like, that competitive aspect. Understands where to be in terms of spacing, and more often than not, most instances, doesn't get lost out there too terribly much in the spacing in regards to that spacing the field. Just not a very flashy guy. Top end speed, not the greatest. So that's what limits him kind of in man coverage. Not only that, just his length limits in man coverage. So just needs to work on just not being overly aggressive, because he is scrappy, not biting, on double moves, stuff like that. So, but a lot of, moving him around in certain positions will kind of take that, he won't have to do that as much in certain situations, depending on where they put him. But he's just a high IQ, max effort type of player.
Yep. Yeah. Big fan of Malcolm Hartsock.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else on Malcolm?
No, we're good to go.
All right, let's move on. All right, so the next person that we are going to go into here is a newer addition to the team. So we don't know a ton about him, but we're going to dive into just a little bit and spend a couple seconds on Justin Rhett. So, Brian, go ahead and lead us off with that.
Yeah, really good size. It's 6'1", 200 pounds. The problem with him was he was in a log jam at safety last year or two at Georgia, which there's 5 stars and 4 stars everywhere. So it's not overly surprising. But he was a former consensus 4-star recruit, big time recruit. Everybody wanted him coming out of high school. Really talented, just kind of needs to hone in on his skills at safety because he's been kind of back and forth like Buford. I wouldn't rule him out as a potential option to start at safety, but right now he's primarily working with the 2s. He's getting some reps with the 1s, and that's all we really know in terms of what's happening right now with spring ball. Yeah.
So, and, with Justin Rhett, I had a few bullet points from a breakdown I did a while back on him. Like you said, former 4-star, played at Bishop Gorman. Just a good blend of size, athleticism, and versatility that, he adds to the secondary. But he's got a well-built frame. That's the best way I could describe it. Like just, 6 foot, 6'1" 200 pounds, you'll think he probably end up 6 foot, 6'1", probably 215, something like that, 210. But yeah, so just a really, well-built, athletic type of guy, good frame for both positions. That's the best breakdown of his height and weight. It's a good fit for either one. Just whatever the way they want to take it with him if there's more changes in his future, but needs to just learn the nuances of the safety position, the technique, to go with his athleticism and, to go with his agility, his change of direction, those type of things. And just needs experience. I think that's another big thing, just not a lot of experience. So that'll be valuable as time goes on, but definitely a player with a lot of high upside that doesn't get talked about a ton. So anything else on Justin before we move to the next player?
No, I think we'll see him on the field though. Just don't be surprised if he's playing quite a bit. Keep an eye out for him in the spring game too. You'll definitely see him in the spring game.
Agreed. All right, our next player in this series is going to be Brilan Prud, and this is a guy that we talked about a little bit before. Is a freak of nature. So go ahead and give us a little bit of a breakdown before I go into mine.
Yeah, Brilan Prud, freak of nature, 6'4". He's probably over 200 pounds by now once they update the roster. I look at him as very similar to Singleton, and since they're both big safeties, that could be an option at Rover. He played 2 games last year, mostly on special teams, played a few snaps here and there at safety. I think he's still a year away, regardless if he stays at safety. Does he move to Rover or does he move to linebacker? And the reason why I say he could move to linebacker is he's a really good athlete, like we just talked about. He ran a sub 49 second 400 meter in track in high school. He played linebacker his senior year of high school, and he was a first team all district. He could add 20, maybe 30 pounds. I would see him, if they moved him to linebacker, as a very similar role as Javin Wright, who is leaving after this coming season. A pass coverage linebacker is something Nebraska will need in the future. Vincent Shavers can cover, but his best ability is run the fence, and you still need that guy that can come in and be at pass coverage linebacker. Could Brilan do that after Wright leaves? Certainly possible.
Yeah, and Brilan just like we talked about before the show, unicorn. I think you mentioned the word unicorn, just a physical freak, 6'4", 200 pounds, maybe even bigger than that now. But we talked about the 40 that he ran at the satellite camp. He ran a 4.42 and a 4.47. At that size, you know, that is a freak in terms of just his overall abilities, and that's what makes you excited about a player of his caliber. It's just he lacks those, you know, those refined skills, the technical things that are going to make him a great player. And this has me pose the question to you. You know, what are the odds of seeing him just kind of as a pass rusher while he's kind of raw?
Oh man, that's tough.
I don't think it's likely that he, but I was just curious because I feel like that's one of those you could just take advantage of that in you know, a few snaps here and there.
Yeah, with his size and length, it would certainly be an option. With him in high school, though, he was not like a guy that was lighting up, you know, with sacks and TFLs. He was truly like, I think Javin Wright is like a legitimate comparison. Like they're similar in size, their skill sets are very similar. They both started at safety, and one Javin moved down to linebacker. I think that's the same trajectory we could see with him, is just being that guy, that big physical freak, that sideline to sideline linebacker. I think Rover's probably his natural fit or linebacker. I think he's a slow safety and a fast linebacker, which we've mentioned that before about Singleton. So,
no, I agree with you. And reason being is because, you know, even before he played safety and outside linebacker. So it's not really, he's kind of already been working on those, you know, those style positions as opposed to just being a, you know, stand-up pass rusher, aggressive downhill. So I agree with you. But I think the overall skill refinement and just how quickly they can get him ready, you know, by whether it's by next year, you know, he will definitely see snaps, of course, played special teams and stuff like that. But a 49-second 400, it's just hard to kind of not let him see the field somewhere. So it's just a matter of where they can get him on there. I think that's what they're going to do, similar to Carter Nelson. So yeah, just really needs to work on his instincts, you know, technique, football IQ, but his versatility just makes him such a big athlete. And you know, hammering in a position will be very good, because he's the type of player that you need to really hone in specifically on a set of skills, because you can't build a, you know, across the board skill set, multiple position skill set with a guy that's raw in college. You need to just hammer down on some certain things and be able to kind of, you know, develop those. So very raw, but exciting player nonetheless.
Yeah, big fan of his. We're just probably a year or two away still with him. Just very, very raw.
Exactly. So anything else on Brilan before we move on?
We are good on Brilan.
All right, two more. So let's go ahead and move on. All right, moving forward to our next player is a player that a lot of fans are excited about. Caleb Benning, of course, didn't see the field a lot last year, but, you know, played his best ball in the bowl game against Boston College. I think he only saw time before that in the Wisconsin game. So 5'11", 200 pounds. So go ahead and give us your breakdown on Caleb Benning.
Yeah, he's playing really well right now in spring camp. He's very likely going to be on the 2 deep at one of the safety spots, whether it's, you know, backing up Buford or backing up, you know, if it's Rhett or if it's Hartzog at the other safety spot, likely backing up one of those right now is my read. He might be a little bit behind Mario Buford, the other Buford brother. We'll get to him in a minute. With him, though, he's not a great athlete, meaning he doesn't have like elite speed. He doesn't have elite top end speed. He's not a guy that can just turn and run with anybody. But where he makes up for that is his football IQ. Incredibly smart player. He uses his knowledge to be in position before, whether you're at the point where like, I need to just turn and burn, or I need to sprint to that spot, because his knowledge of what's happening in front of him allows him to be at the right spot. Three-way player in high school, was dominant as a wide receiver at Westside, was dominant as a safety at Westside, and he was dominant as a kick returner and a punt returner. Where I would say he makes his mark this year is going to be, again, on special teams. Kick return, maybe an option. Punt returner might be an option, but also on punt coverage and kick coverage, because his ability to get down the field as well will be vital on those units.
Yeah, agreed. The way I describe him best is instinctual, and really good with anticipation. I think that's his game. Excels at reading plays, jumping routes, good in run support. Like you said, doesn't jump off the page anywhere, but his football IQ does. So just athletically, not as much. Played safety, wide receiver, return specialist, kind of like you mentioned. So he's adaptable across positions. Was on a winning team, 13-0, I believe. That team won a state title. So he knows that mentality, a winning culture, knows what that feels like. Damon Benning, of course, we all know. Yep. Damon Benning. But 5'11", so not as lengthy. Not necessarily lengthy, which could hurt him against taller guys, but in the situation that they're going to put him in, I don't think that'll be too big of an issue. So Caleb Benning is going to be a really, really good, solid player on this defense.
Yep.
So anything else before we move forward to our last player?
We're good to go.
All right, moving on to one of our favorite players. All right, so last player here on today's episode, Mario Buford. So, Brian, I know you're excited to talk about him. I'll let you go ahead and break him down, and I'll give the rest of my take from there.
I love Mario Buford. Physical safety. He isn't scared to come up and lay the wood and knock somebody out. Good size, 6 foot. He's listed at 175 pounds. That's last year's weight. He's probably pushing 190 by now. He's had a full off season to add weight because that was his one concern. It was a little thin, but that's not unusual as a true freshman. The younger brother of Marquez Buford, he was a consensus 4-star recruit in high school. Didn't redshirt last year. He played all 11 games, or not all, but played in 11 games. And he played really good against Northern Iowa. Purdue, he played really well. And the game that stood out to me was the Ohio State game. Now, they were kind of putting him in different situations, different packages. And those snaps, and it wasn't a ton. He played like 15, 20 snaps. But when you get those snaps, you do what you can. And he played very well. He was going against Jeremiah Smith, who's arguably the best receiver in college football already. It was against a team that won a national title, and he held his own. And he was very impressive. Really high upside. Not overly fast, but he's pretty quick. Ran a 23.8 second in the 200 meter in high school. He had over a 20-foot long jump, which is really impressive. That shows his explosion in short spaces. I think his athleticism gets him on the field in some capacity, whether that's special teams, whether that's rotating in at safety, which Nebraska doesn't rotate a ton at safety, but I think he's going to be on the field because of his athleticism.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah. Athleticism is definitely a strong point. Like you said, put on the necessary weight, was only 175 pounds coming into last season. So, probably still can put on a little bit more lean weight, but, like I said, in a much better spot in terms of that. Lengthy for his height. I don't know why I said height. Do you do that sometimes? Height.
Do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not the only one. Just making sure. All right. But yeah, I think I mentioned when we were talking before 6'3.5" in terms of his overall wingspan, which is really, really good at his height. But one of the big things that I liked about him coming out was 6A in the state of Texas. So not only that, 6A state champions in the state of Texas. So, and he got better from his senior year. He started on varsity at a 6A school in Texas as a sophomore, 18 tackles year one, 32 tackles, I believe, in his junior year, 42 tackles in his senior year. So improved steadily. And, so he's only going to continue to get better. Just needs some experience and consistency, and that'll keep him on the field. But yeah, like you said, made the most of his opportunities before. So, he's going to be a guy who really, really pushes these veterans to be better, and they're going to push him to be better too. So we had a lot of good stuff coming from Mario Buford.
Yeah, he's probably got the highest upside of any of these younger guys in that safe. Now, it's not a knock on the others. I just think his elite athleticism, his length that you mentioned, 6'3" wingspan, that's going to make a big difference when you're in coverage. Everything is just kind of pointing in the direction of once he kind of gets that opportunity of being a legitimate NFL prospect at safety 2 or 3 years down the road. We've got time, though, because there's so many seniors in front of him where we don't have to rush him into playing time, which I love being in that position.
Agreed. Yep. So anything else on Buford before we move and conclude the show?
Nope, we are good to go.
All right, so that'll be all for us. If you made it this far, please consider liking, subscribing to the channel. Leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of the video. And if you want more stuff like this, if you want us to do, we'll probably be doing another one of these later on in the spring, right before the season starts, just as things kind of iron themselves out. Again, tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central, join us for our first edition of our new call-in show, the Husker Gutter, again, named by you, the fans. So blame Fitz-Night for that one.
It's a great name.
Husker. It is a great name. It is a great name. So we will see y'all there. Hopefully see y'all there, and y'all be ready to call in and let's have a good time, talk some draft and talk Husker football. So, all right. With that being said, we will see you on the next video. Peace.